Hello, everybody. We are back with our next episode in our Monday Night Wars What If series in TEW 2020. It is the go home. That is not the go home. It is the Fallout show of Super Brawl 1996. It is time for Nitro. And after the big show that happened at Super Brawl, which you should definitely go and watch if you haven't already, because it was a jam-packed show that featured a lot of great stuff happening in it. We have questions to hopefully be answered here tonight on Nitro, including the big question: who attacked Roddy Piper? Who is the one that put Piper in the hospital? We're going to find that out here tonight on Nitro, along with some other questions that we need answered. And the only way to get these answers is to dive right into the action. We open up with a dark match featuring Christopher Daniels defeating Hayabusa in 702 by pinfall with a Death Valley driver. 42 rating for the matchup. Nice little match between these two men, just getting them some work in front of a crowd of 9,114 people at the Humphrey Coliseum. So big time crowd, and they get to put in the work in a 7-minute matchup for these 9,000. Because we're full of dark matches tonight, we have a second dark match in which Takako Inoue defeated Megumi Kudo in 638 by pinfall with a Hurricane. I can't speak today, apparently. 41 rating. They have great chemistry, and it showed in their performances, which is good. Kudo with a 41, Inoue with a 31. Good stuff there as we continue to very slowly build up the women's division in WCW. And our third of 3 dark matches of the night features Terry Richards defeating Chris Kanyon in 701 by pinfall with a gore, or he just kind of calls it a spear, I guess, at this point. Gets a 34 rating, 33 from Kanyon, 31 from Richards. No idea why this one didn't do as great. Although, to be fair, the ratings were a little bit lower. The previous 2 matches, there was somebody with at least a 40 in it. This match, neither one of them cracked 33 or 34 or higher, so. But dark matches out of the way, we need to find out what's happening on Nitro, and the only way to do that is by clicking this button that takes us to the opening of Monday Nitro, in which we get Sting, our WCW World's Heavyweight Champion, coming out, still the World's Heavyweight Champion after a disqualification loss to the Giant at Super Brawl. He did lose the match, but because the title cannot change hands by disqualification, he did retain the title. Sting opens up Nitro and says that although he's not thrilled about the end result of the match last night, he is happy that he is still your World's Heavyweight Champion. But but in the last 24 hours, the ending of that match is nagging at him. If Savage wanted to get revenge on Giant, he could have waited until after the match. He could have waited until the right opportunity presented itself. He didn't have to do it blatantly in front of the referee to cause a disqualification victory for the Giant, because now the Giant officially has a victory over Sting, and Sting understands that there's wins and losses that happen all the time in wrestling, but the idea that it was a disqualification victory with the title on the line kind of eats at Sting a little bit, because that means that he didn't actually retain that belt. He's kind of just champion by default. And that's when Randy Savage comes out, and he's like, Sting, I mean no disrespect, but you know that I've been waiting weeks now to try to get my hands on the Giant again. After Giant put me on the shelf with that chokeslam back at Clash of Champions, I was waiting. I needed to get my hands on him, and so that was the opportunity to do so. And at the same time, I saved WCW. Sting's like, you saved WCW. Savage is like, yeah, I saved WCW because he had you hooked. He had you ready to be chokeslammed. If that chokeslam had connected, you would not have kicked out, and we would be left with the Giant as the WCW World's Heavyweight Champion. It would be a horrible time in the history of WCW, and it would have been a nightmare. It would have been a nightmare that we would have had trouble waking up from, and I could not allow that to happen. So I did what was necessary to keep that big monster from standing atop the mountain here in WCW. And that's when Taskmaster and Giant comes out. And Taskmaster is just laughing at this. He's like, see, I knew it. I knew that you guys all feared the Giant, that everyone in this company feared the Giant. You had to resort to underhanded, to tactics that so many times you call underhanded when it's us that do it or when it's someone else that does it. But when you guys do it, it's a good thing. You're saving the company. And Sting's like, hold on a second. I'm not associating myself with this attack. I'm not happy that this attack happened. I would have, you know what, in complete honesty, if somehow Giant was to have hit that chokeslam on me and pin me for the 3 count at Super Brawl, I would have been much happier with that than the disqualification that I saw that happened because of that. And Taskmaster's like, well, really? So you're saying that you want to defend the title against the Giant again in the future, and this time make sure that nobody interferes, so that when the Giant defeats you cleanly, you're going to accept the result of that. And Sting is like, well, he's not going to defeat me, but yes, I would have no problem defending the title against the Giant in the near future. I know Flair has a shot at the title, and it gets announced here that Flair and Sting is official for the uncensored pay-per-view coming up at the end of this month. But Sting says, but I have no problem defending against the Giant at any point in time in the near future. And this time, Savage, you will stay out of the, you will not interfere. I want to to be the role model that I'm trying to be here, to be the greatest WCW World Heavyweight Champion I'm trying to be here. I need to defeat people cleanly. I do not need to resort to outside help like so many of others here in this company do. And Savage leaves the ring at this point. He's just annoyed because Sting refuses to see this as Savage saving the company, and he just leaves. He just flat out leaves. And Taskmaster just kind of laughs before he and the Giant go back to the back. Sting is telling Savage, he's trying to tell Savage to come back so they can talk about it, but Savage is just leaving. And that's how the opening segment of Nitro ends, with Sting kind of left standing in the ring, kind of unsure about what's going on. So it seems like Savage spent the last month or so recovering and also believing that he's going to be the savior of this company now or something. I don't know. I don't know. But apparently Randy Savage is going to save the company. As this segment is coming to an end, we do find out that tonight's main event is going to see Randy Savage in action for the first time in weeks, as he is going to be taking on Dustin Rhodes in the main event. So that'll be an interesting matchup. This gets an 87, though, which is good stuff. After that, we get a pre-taped interview from Steve Austin. Fire segments one after another right now, as Steve Austin is interviewed about Super Brawl and says that, you know what, he has no problem being honest in the fact that he did lose to Ric Flair. But that's one match. That is one battle. And if you think that Steve Austin is going to be held back, it's going to be discouraged, that's going to be tossed aside by one battle, then you are sadly mistaken, because Austin does what he wants to do when he wants to do it, and he's going to make sure that this supposed future that he is occurs sooner than anyone predicts. So if you think for a second that he has done Ric Flair, if you think for a second that he's done chasing after the World's Heavyweight Championship here in WCW, Steve Austin is going to fire back. He's going to do what it takes to get himself a victory over Ric Flair and to get himself a future shot at the WCW World's Heavyweight Championship. And that's it. So he's kind of having a little bit of a fired up segment here. He admits that he lost at Super Brawl, but at the same time, he's shown that he's not giving up. He's not letting it discourage him, and that he's gonna keep fighting. So interesting stuff here. Of course, like I said, Flair and Sting has been announced as official as the main event for the uncensored pay-per-view coming up at the end of March. But I mean, doesn't mean that Austin and Flair still can't try to have some issues settled between them before then or after then or whatever. So we'll have to see how that all plays out. After that, we get a decent little matchup in which Ron Simmons, fresh off of his victory on Super Brawl Saturday night, defeats Mr. JL in 9-11 by pinfall of the Dominator. 66 from Ron Simmons, 43 from JL. Yeah, it was just a nice little match here. Simmons got a chance to look pretty good, decent, to look good, to get a victory. But at the same time, Mr. JL got a little bit of an opportunity during the matchup to get some offense in and look kind of decent against Simmons. So interesting matchup there. But at the end of the day, Ron Simmons getting the victory and building a little more momentum for himself at this point. After that, we go to a interesting segment where we see the disappointed Paul Werndorff working out at the gym. Because he's Mr. Wonderful and he's always working out. He's always focused on making his body look as wonderful as possible. But he clearly does not have his usual confidence about him. He clearly looks disappointed. He clearly seems like he's not as happy and confident as he normally would be in the gym. But then he notices somebody off on the other side of the gym. He kind of finds himself staring at him a little bit. Weirdly creepy, but he does find himself staring at him a little bit. Camera kind of pans over to see an individual who has been briefly featured in WCW as of late. He's had a couple matches here and there. A guy by the name of Shawn Stasiak. And that's kind of where everything ends. We're kind of left with this weird thing of why Werndorff is weirdly looking at Shawn Stasiak in the gym. Kind of a weird thing. That's where the segment ends, so more questions than answers at this point for that one. We move on from that to Diamond Dallas Page coming out to the ring, and he is laughing about the fact that he now has his shot to regain his WCW United States Championship. He says that it was unfairly taken away from him, the title he never actually won. He says it was unfairly taken away from him by Eddie Guerrero, and that if Eddie Guerrero is any sort of a man, he will come out here and present him with the belt right now before they have to have a match where Page will easily defeat him and take his belt back again. Eddie Guerrero comes out and essentially, right off the bat says that Page is absolutely loco, absolutely crazy in the head. Diamond Dallas Page has never been the WCW United States Champion. Eddie does not understand where this crazy mindset of Page is as to whether he is holding, whether he was ever the champion or not. But Eddie's not going to hand the championship over to him. If Page wants wants the belt, he's going to have to actually defeat Eddie Guerrero in the ring to win the belt. He's going to have to actually defeat him. He's not going to just get it handed to him. Just because he's the number one contender for the United States Championship does not mean he's going to get it handed over to him. And Page is like, yeah, but it is my belt. You should just hand it to me right now. You should give that to me right now. I should not have to compete in some match with you for it. You should just hand it to me right now. And Eddie's like, I'm not going to hand you anything. I've worked hard to get this championship. I've worked hard to retain the title since then. I'm not going to hand you anything. They have a bit of an argument back and forth, and doesn't really lead much of anywhere. Eventually, Page walks off frustrated about the fact that Eddie just won't hand him the belt, and that's kind of where the segment ends. We're kind of left with Eddie just looking completely confused, unsure what the hell to think about with Page, as Page is very obsessed about the fact that Eddie needs to hand him the belt, that Eddie needs to hand him his belt, as he keeps saying. So, no idea where Page's mind is at right now, but these two are destined for a future for a future match with the United States Championship on the line, so we'll have to see where that all leads to. After that odd segment, we move on from that. We see James Mitchell backstage in a dark, kind of eerie room with Ming. It's one of those weird spaces where like all you see is just like this red lighting. You can kind of tell. You can see that it's clearly James Mitchell and Ming, but like in the background, all you see is just this weird lighting, this weird red lighting kind of thing. So it's kind of this weird dark room. And James Mitchell says that Ming tore apart Dustin Rhodes last night at Super Brawl, and now he has his next target, his next victim, if you will. His next victim is the man who also suffered a beating at the hands of Ming last night, and that would be the television champion himself, Johnny B. Bad. So he says, Johnny, whenever you are recovered enough, does the air quotes about it, whenever you're recovered enough to try to take on Ming, the challenge is out there. Ming wants to make you his next victim. All you have to do is show up against the monster and be destroyed. But the smarter thing for you to do would be to run away, because when Ming gets a hold of you, you're going to wish you had run away. So pretty strong words there from James Mitchell, as the challenge has been kind of thrown out. The challenge is thrown out for Ming versus Johnny B. Bad. We'll have to see if and when that ends up happening. If and or when that ends up happening. After that, we get a nice little interview from with Cactus Jack, and with Gene Okerlund interviewing Cactus Jack, and Cactus kind of just goes over his victory at Super Brawl, and then he also kind of talks about how defeating Paul Werndorff was one step into continuing to get himself more into the picture of the World's Heavyweight Championship, because it would be great for Cactus to get a shot at the belt or to just get championship gold around his waist. It's been a while since he's had it, and he may be a ugly son of a bitch, as Paul Werndorff mentioned during one of his promos, but it would be it's not all about the looks here in this business. It's about having that skill in that ring, and Cactus Jack knows he has a skill to become a champion here in 1996. It's just a matter of time. So kind of a nice little basic promo with Cactus there. We move on from that to a second matchup of the evening, in which Dean Malenko defeats Bunkhouse Buck in 8:27 by pinfall with Super Gutbuster. Of course, this is from the story, the feud that's been happening recently with Colonel Robert Parker and Medusa. As you saw at Super Brawl, Dean Malenko was cost his match against Diamond Dallas Page because of Colonel Robert Parker. And here tonight, he gets revenge on the man that one of the last remaining members of the stud stable at this point, as Bunkhouse Buck is defeated by Dean Malenko. 68 rating, 70 from Malenko, 41 from Buck. Really about all there is to it at this point. After that match, it is time for the big moment. The big moment to find out what happened. Bischoff is being interviewed out on the stage by Gene Okerlund. He says that the WCW board has gone over the video footage time and time again, and he is finally ready to reveal who actually attacked Roddy Piper. And that's when the Blue Bloods interrupt. The Blue Bloods come out and they interrupt, and they say, look, we know that you're going to try to pin it on one of, well, Regal's on the mic. He says, we know that you're going to try to pin it on one of us. We know. We understand that you're going to try to do so. It's pretty obvious you're going to try to do so. So we went out and did the right thing. And he hands over a folder to Bischoff. And Bischoff opens the folder, kind of looks at it, and he's like, what am I looking at here? And Regal goes, there's the proof that we were never around the arena at the time of Roddy Piper being attacked. There is proof that we went through a toll booth at that time, or right around that time, way too far away from the arena to possibly have attacked Piper at that moment in time. You can check the witness reports that are in this folder to find out, to see that we were never actually there. They actually can prove that we were never around. That they can show that all three of us were in a car at the time of this happening. So you cannot sit here and try to blame us for a second for this attack on Piper. And Bischoff looks at the folder and then kind of looks around a little bit, and he's like, "You're right. We can't prove that you were there. Truth be told, we don't know who attacked him." And the video footage is aired for those watching at home anyway, because this is back in 1996. They didn't exactly have the Titantron yet in the arena, or at least WCW didn't. WWF did, but not WCW. Kind of weird. Anyway, but essentially it gets revealed. You see Piper being attacked by some unknown figure with a hood up over their head. And Bischoff's like, that's all we have right now. So we're still looking into it, because it does show the figure getting into a car with the license plate kind of blurred. Because, of course, this is 1996. They don't have the greatest technology in the world at this point. But Bischoff says that he knows that you guys, as in the Blue Bloods, are responsible somehow. There's no reason why Piper would suddenly be attacked after the months that you've been having to deal with him going at you. So, we're going to get down to the bottom of this. We're going to find out who attacked him, and then I'm going to find out how you're linked to it. And for now, to do so, I'm going to be sticking around. Piper being out on the shelf right now, being out in the hospital, he obviously cannot be the representative for the board of directors right now as it stands. So I'm going to be around. I'm going to be doing his job for the time being. At the same time, we will continue continuing the investigation, and we will find out. We will find out that you are linked to this somehow. And then at that point, you will be suspended indefinitely. Regal has a smirk, smug smirk on his face as he's like, he's not heard on the mic necessarily, but he's kind of pointing at the folder, being like, you have the evidence. We weren't there. The Blue Bloods leave as Bischoff looks kind of disappointed looking at the folder, and the segment kind of ends there. So we don't find out who attacked Piper yet, but supposedly the Blue Bloods have their alibi. They have things covered, so we'll have to see. But we do find out that there's going to be an investigation to find out who attacked Piper in the coming weeks. And we find out that Eric Bischoff's going to be sticking around in the authority role for a while here in WCW. So we'll have to see how that all plays out. Gets 70, which isn't too bad, honestly. But there you go. We move on from that to the Horsemen. As Bischoff is walking to the back, Okerlund starts to walk to the back, and that's when the Horsemen come out, and they kind of acknowledge Bischoff a little bit there. Pillman does what Pillman does and kind of plays with his tie a little bit, but otherwise the Horsemen kind of acknowledge him as he walks by, and they grab Okerlund, not letting him get to the back, and they're going to have a promo here, as the Horsemen have a promo where they kind of break down what happened at Super Bowl. Arn reveals that he was bested by the better man on that night. He can admit it. He was bested by Eddie Guerrero on that night, but if he thinks for a second that Eddie Guerrero's out of the frying pan yet when it comes to the Horsemen and the Horsemen business, that he is sadly mistaken, because the Horsemen will get their revenge on Eddie Guerrero for being involved in the Horseman business at Clash of Champions, even though it really wasn't. But Arn says that for now he's moving on to other things, and Pillman gets grabs the mic so he can speak, and he says, enough of that failure though, which kind of draws a little bit of a look from Arn. He says, enough of that failure though. At Super Brawl, the greatest tag team in this company once again retained the tag team titles. They kept saying that the Steiner brothers were going to finally defeat the Horsemen, and the Steiner brothers were finally going to give it to the Horsemen and make the Horsemen pay for everything they've done, and blah, 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 this and that, and this and that. But yet, they couldn't get the job done. They couldn't get the job done. He starts kind of just singing a little bit, bragging about it over, and Arn just looks at him like he's kind of a little bit of an idiot. Okerlund goes, well, what about your next challengers now? What about Bam Bam Bigelow and Vader? And Pillman suddenly just stops singing and just stares at Okerlund. It's like, they're not challenging us. Okerlund's like, well, they have the next shot at the tag team titles. And Pillman's like, no, they're not getting their shot. They're not getting their shot. We decide when we defend the titles, not them. We decide. Okerlund seems like he's done with this annoyance that is Brian Pillman, so he turns his attention to Ric Flair. And Flair, with his usual, me, by God, Gene. He says that the last night at Super Brawl, he had arguably one of his greatest matches of his career. He had a hell of a matchup with a hell of a talent in this company. And that if things were different, if only the man would see the truth, he would easily be a Horseman. He could easily be a member of the Four Horsemen. But he's stuck in his ways. He's stuck in his ways of doing the good thing and being the right, being all positive and doing what's right. He doesn't want to do the supposed bad thing that the Horsemen do. But regardless, he says that he had a hell of a matchup with the guy, but at the end of the day, Ric Flair, the Nature Boy, once again, standing tall, getting the victory. Now he goes on to Uncensored to win back his WCW World Heavyweight Championship. He says that he has been waiting for this opportunity ever since Vader gave up at Starrcade a few months ago. And that now it's one-on-one, him and Sting. Sting and Ric Flair, once again, another chapter in that historic book, that historic rivalry, once again going at it. And this time, Flair is going to win. This time, Flair is going to finish this chapter as the champion. And the Horsemen leave with that as we get a little bit of stuff there. First off, Brian Pillman apparently is just refusing to defend the titles against Bigelow and Vader. He may not have an option to refuse that. We get a little bit of dissension between Arn Anderson and Brian Pillman there. But we also find out that Flair actually wants Steve Austin in the Horsemen, but Steve Austin doesn't want to be in the Horsemen, which is kind of an interesting thing. But nevertheless, kind of finding out that he's going to, he's going to try to win the world title at Uncensored, which we, already kind of knew. So, interesting promo there. Gets a 90. Good stuff there for sure. And then we get a promo from the Steiner brothers backstage. The Steiner brothers talk about how they couldn't get the job done last night at Super Brawl. But that doesn't mean that they aren't going to get the job done next time, because the Steiner brothers have had losses in this business, but they are not going to simply bow out of the way just because they lost one match. And before they're even able to say anything else, that's when all of a sudden they get lambasted by Bam Bam Bigelow and Vader, who just lay them the hell out, just beating them down backstage. I mean, Obviously, it's not immediately laying them out. They are trying to, the Steiner brothers try to fight back, but eventually they get laid out by Bam Bam Bigelow and Vader, who just leave them laid out as the road agents and other staff member come running in to try to stop the fight from happening. This gets an 86. Good stuff there. This show is on fire tonight. We move on to Dustin Rhodes with a brief little promo before the main event. He says that he has been suffering a little bit as of late. He lost last night to Ming, but he went to Eric Bischoff and the board asking for this matchup against Randy Savage here tonight because he wants to prove that he can still get the job done here in this company. He wants to prove that he can still get victories when it needs to be. He doesn't care that he's still sore from the match last night. He's going to do what it takes to prove himself against Randy Savage. And if the Giant wants to get involved, then the Giant can try to get involved, but he will fight off the Giant. He's had a history with the Giant in recent months, and he will do what it takes to make sure that Savage and Rhodes is just a one-on-one affair. And then we get to the match itself, and it gets an 84. Let's go. 84 rating. As in an exceptional matchup, Dustin Rhodes actually gets the victory over Randy Savage. Granted, it is after Randy Savage gets counted out because he gets attacked by the Giant on the outside. Essentially what happened is Dustin Rhodes is laid out. Great back and forth match between these two. Dustin Rhodes gets laid out at the end. Savage goes up top for the elbow. Taskmaster comes running down and jumps up on the apron to distract the referee. That's when the Giant comes from out of nowhere, seemingly, grabs Savage by the throat, pulls him off the top rope, and then chokeslams him down to the outside, laying him out. When the referee is no longer distracted by Taskmaster, he sees Savage laid out on the outside. He yells at the Giant, but the Giant he doesn't yell at the Giant, but he looks around trying to figure out what the heck happened, because Giant, despite being 7 foot tall and as big as he is, seemingly disappeared. In truth, he just laid down and kind of rolled underneath the ring a little bit, so he couldn't be seen. But he yells at the Taskmaster a little bit before he starts the count. Dustin starts to get up to his feet at the count of 8, or around the count of 7, looking around, trying to figure out what's happening. He sees the Taskmaster there. He is looking around trying to see where the Giant is, and the referee gets to a 10 count, counting out Randy Savage and giving the victory tonight to Dustin Rhodes. Right as the bell rings, Giant comes back out from underneath the ring and just starts attacking, just continues the beatdown on Randy Savage, as does the Taskmaster. Dustin Rhodes immediately gets out of the ring to try to fight off Giant and Taskmaster, and actually does fight him for a little bit before Giant just lays out Dustin Rhodes with a big boot, and then picks him up and just chucks him, just kind of tosses him, or kind of beels him really, into the guardrail, leaving Dustin Rhodes hurt at that point. Then Sting comes running down, wallops Giant with a chair a few times, wallops Taskmaster with a chair, kind of chases them off a little bit before grabbing a mic and issuing a challenge next week on Nitro for it to be Sting and Randy Savage against the Taskmaster and the Giant. So as of right now, that is potentially our main event for Nitro next week, which is a huge, huge match for sure. In front of these 9,114 people in the Humphrey Coliseum, we get an 86 overall rating. Let's go. A lot of great segments on this show. 5 of them getting at least an 85. The main event getting an 84 rating. Good stuff all around. Increased our popularity in 21 regions. Good stuff all around for sure for this episode of Nitro. As, that is a big time rating for us. better rating than Super Brawl was. But nevertheless, yeah, a really great show, as we will have to see if the momentum continues. So we're going to have to see who actually attacked Piper, as the investigation is going to continue on. We have the big tag team match that is more than likely going to be an official match next week on Nitro. It will be Savage and Sting taking on Giant and the Taskmaster. We have a bunch of other things that happened. We had the Horsemen and have their promo over. Apparently, Brian Pillman refuses to defend the titles against Bam Bam Bigelow and Vader, which it seems like Bigelow and Vader might be a little busy themselves because they decided to randomly attack the Steiners. So, a lot of crazy stuff happening on the show for sure. And because I need to show it, for the first time ever, ladies and gentlemen, Nitro has defeated Raw in the ratings. Let's go. And what a big of jump too. I don't know how the heck we got that many. 2.5 million viewers for Nitro this week, which got an 86. 1.8 million for Raw, which had an 83. Huge victory for WCW in the ratings war this week, as Undertaker defeated Psycho Sid and Diesel to retain the title in the main event of Raw for them. We also had Hogan Warrior defeat Bret Hart and Razor Ramon, which is just a mess. As you see, by the way, Jerry Lawler did win the IC title at some point, so that's a thing. But yeah, that is huge. That is huge. That Nitro defeats Raw in the ratings. Not only defeats them, like that was not even, because recently we've had those close, we've had the just short of them, like less than 100,000. We beat them by like 700,000 viewers this week. That's insane. That is absolutely insane. And I promise you, I have not been changing anything off screen. The only, I guess to be fair, the only thing that, well, no, I didn't do any of these yet. I was going to say that the only thing that happened might have been the broadcasters, but I haven't do the broadcasters yet because they're coming up next month. I have to redo some of these deals. The only thing that happened was with Saturday night. I added a view, or I changed a thing for Saturday night because TBS didn't want to put Saturday night on anymore, so now we're on ESPN2. But otherwise, I didn't really do anything. I guess you can see here, popularity-wise, we're up to a 70 in the Southeast now, and a 60 across the board, which is increasing as time has gone on. So maybe that's part of it. We've gone from 55 in the Southeast and 45 everywhere else, all the way up to a 70 in the Southeast and 60 everywhere else. So we've gone up 15 popularity points since I started the series 7 months ago at this point. So huge, pretty huge. We're at medium size. We're working our way towards big size. Probably going to still be another year or so before we get to big size, but we're getting there. We are getting there for sure. Nevertheless, thank you for watching as we continue this crazy build to try to take over the wrestling world in the mid-90s. We have our first victory. We have our first Raw versus Nitro victory. Can we continue that on next week? What will happen in the investigation into Roddy Piper's attack? What will happen in that potential, for sure, tag team main event match? What else is going to happen? Who the hell knows? Only one way to find out, and that is to watch the next episode when it airs next week. Until then, see our Daredevil. Catching you guys all next time.